Good evening and welcome. It is the Wednesday edition of Niger Voices, and it's coming live and direct from Star Radio UK. It is the finest African and Caribbean radio station in London. It is the end of the last day of the Wednesday edition of this program before we go into the new month next week. Quite a lot to discuss this evening. And the most important thing is I'd like to welcome those of you that have joined us from around the world. My name is Olayomi Koiki, and I'll be driving you home tonight. First and foremost, I'd like to go back and say thank you so much to my producer, Mr. Frank David, and Mr. Archie Amon, that are working tirelessly behind the scene. Likewise, a very good evening to all our viewers from around the globe as you are settling into the program. There is a lot of conversation. There's a lot to discuss as usual, as the month is almost completely winding down. By tomorrow, we'll be saying bye-bye to November, and the next month will be a very, very key month that a lot of people, especially those that are campaigning for the self-determination, will be looking forward to what next with the movement and the Biafra, the Middle Belt, the election in Nigeria. But the question tonight that I'm going to be reviewing, after looking at the democracy in Nigeria in the last 2 decades, are we now going into the final stage of the collapse of the Nigerian democracy? We actually are going to review a senior advocate of Nigeria interview that was granted in one of the newspaper in Nigeria, and that is what I'm going to be looking at. That will take me through probably maybe about 2 hours or an hour and a half. Then I'm going to talk about as the expectation for the Yorubas is out there. They're asking questions: are we still going to get that super rally? Are we still going to officially get out of Nigeria, and how do we manage what next? All these I'll be discussing this evening. But one thing I can say is Nigeria democracy, are we seeing the collapse of it? When we look back to some of the countries around the globe, when I take us back to countries that have actually dissolved, we talk about Slovakia, we talk about the Soviet Union, and so many other countries such that have actually collapsed and built, and new countries have actually emerged out of it as well. I was doing a comparison yesterday. Someone that lives in England and so excited, that I've lived there for over 2 decades. And then looking at England playing Wales, a country or a nation of their own that is less than 3 million. That is actually less than a state in the southwest of Nigeria. So this evening there will be a lot to discuss. But before I go into it, I'd like to say good evening to my my wives, good evening to my children, good evening to my beautiful mother, and good evening as well to all the leaders of the self-determination group as well. Good evening to Professor Banji Akintoye. Good evening to Chief Sunday Adeyemo Igbowo. Good evening to Professor Wale Adeniran. Good evening to Mrs. Modupe Onitiri. Good evening to all the movement. Good evening to Iba Gani Adams. December is going to be a very key point that the Yorubas will look up to before we go into the Nigerian democracy. What gave us the democracy was after the June 12, 1993 election was announced. And that was something that is still in the minds of millions of Nigerians, because in 1993, the late Chief M.K. Abiola, a philanthropist, a businessman, a friend to the Nigerian government, a friend to the military, a friend to the Sultan of Sokoto, was given the assurance that should he come out, he will be given the opportunity, to contest, on the platform of the SDP. And, he actually came out, but something went wrong somewhere. We don't know what went wrong, but eventually the former president, Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida, refused to allow the, the election result to be completed, and that literally means that the late Chief M.K. Abiola was a president that the Yorubas, the Igbos, the Kanuri, the Hausa, the Ijaw, and so many like that did not get. What next? Then led to a lot of crises. The Nadeco erupted. There was a lot of people that were killed. There was uncertainty in the country, between 1993 and up to 1999. It was a very, very tense situation then. MK Abiola won that election without no doubt. People voted for MK Abiola, whether you were an Igbo person, whether you're an Hausa, it does not matter the ethnicity as at the time. But something then happened, and the question was to the minds of the people in the Southwest was the northern part of Nigeria not allowing power to return back, to the Southwest. Eventually, Babangida stepped aside, and till today, he has not actually given us a clarity of why he actually annulled the election. MK Abiola, was not pleased with that. He flew out of Nigeria, he flew back in, and at some point, he actually declared, his election in Lagos, precisely. The military were not happy, and the late Chief MK Abiola was eventually arrested, and the rest, they say, is history. When we look back to that journey, that was something that hit a lot of people, especially those in the southwest of Nigeria, known as the Yorubas. They were not happy. A lot of eruptions started. The Nadeco, as at the time, also was something that we saw erupted quickly. If I take us back a little bit, according to what we have and what we know, the National Democratic Coalition, known as the Nadeco, was actually formed on the 15th of May 1994 by a broad coalition of Nigerian Democrats who called on the military government of the then also the late Sani Abacha to step down in favor of the winner of the June 12, 1993 election, the late Chief MK Abiola. But Abacha himself was not ready to give way for that. And that means there was confrontation between the military and the civilian. If we now go back and ask the question, are we going to see the last part of the democracy that then erupted in 1999 that brought in the former president Olusegun Obasanjo? The reason why Obasanjo was actually brought into the limelight was to suppress especially the Yorubas that were not pleased with what happened in 1993. Obasanjo was brought out of the prison, and eventually he became the president in 1999. But the Yorubas have not forgotten what happened in 1993. If we fast forward, what has then happened? There was a key aspect that the Yorubas were not actually also not sure when Obasanjo was brought in to suppress what we can call a very peaceful, the most fair election that ever took place in Nigeria. Obasanjo became the president. But also there was this sinister that brought in Obasanjo, which was also what is now being used on Nigerians today. And we are talking about nothing more than the fact that the 1999 Constitution that was brought in 1999 was not actually the Constitution of the people. It was not the Constitution that was agreed by Nigerians. But because a lot of Nigerians, as at the time that Obasanjo was brought in, thought this would be a change of government from what we have known to be for a very long time, the military era in Nigeria. So questions were not really asked regarding the 1999 Constitution. But what we know is, with time, after years and days and months, a lot of Nigerians started questioning the 1999 Constitution, whether that Constitution was actually for the people and made by the people. And the 1999 Constitution has been the backbone of Nigeria since 1999 itself. My question tonight again now is, are we seeing the final part of Nigeria before 2023? Apart from the fact that those that are campaigning for the self-determination have not just questioned the 1999 Constitution. They are saying that the union that brought us together in 1960, which gave us the independence from the British government, has also not been kept. And that means our right to self-determination and to pull out of Nigeria is now or never. And that means that the next month, which is going to be December for the Yorubas, will be a very, very important month, in as much as there is a lot of discussion around what has been happening in the last 3 years, whether the Yoruba will pull out of Nigeria, and the Yorubas that are also campaigning for the election in 2023. But the most important thing that everybody need to understand is, whatever brought us together in 1960 has already expired, based on the fact that the military coup and the military intervention in Nigeria after the independence has literally collapsed the union of Nigeria. That is number one fact. The second fact is the 1914 amalgamation. This amalgamation that brought in together the Southern Protectorate and the Northern Protectorate was actually brought together by Lugard. Lugard, from the instruction of the British government as the governor administrator, or should we say on the instruction of the empire, decided to do what we called the 1914 amalgamation that brought in what we now know as Nigeria today. That's another fact, number two. As much as some have argued that there's not a written document that gave the assurance that after 100 years of the union, we can de-amalgamate Nigeria. But one thing is, there was nothing known as Nigeria before 1914. If I take us back again to these beautiful, amazing sculpture, and this sculpture is currently in the hands of the Metropolitan Police here in United Kingdom. And if we go into one of the articles on the BBC on the 26th of June, it actually gave us a bit of background to this sculpture. And this sculpture has been around for more than 700 years. Again, indicate that there was nothing called Nigeria prior to the empire, the British colony that came into Nigeria, that came into that territory. And then with time, the slave trade and all sort of things that happened eventually came in to what is known as Nigeria today. Are we seeing the final part of Nigeria? Some say it is not going to happen because we do not have that capacity. We do not have that means. We don't have the support of everybody to pull out of Nigeria. But I am saying tonight and asking, who then in the world of today decide who is going to be a nation and who is not going to be a nation? Who make those decisions? Because the decision of a nation, or the meaning of a nation, is the identity, the language. And that gave us that if Wales, a population of less than 3 million, can be a nation of their own, why then are we still arguing that the Yorubas that are campaigning was the Biafra, the Middle Belt, cannot have their own nation? As we continue, when I go back to this sculpture, it is actually 700 years old, but the BBC on one of their articles, like I said earlier, told us that this particular bronze sculpture came from somewhere in Ile-Ife, and we only have 20 of these sculptures as at today. But one of those sculptures is currently as a dispute by the London Metropolitan Police. I say good evening, this is Star Radio UK, and I welcome each and every one of you that have joined us so far. If this sculpture has given us the background of some of us, and we have been forced to be told lies for the last 108 years of the 1914 amalgamation, are we now saying that the Yorubas have the right to declare an exit out of Nigeria? Or for those that are saying it is not about declaration, it is not about the exit of Nigeria, you will still have the same issues when you come out of Nigeria as an independent nation. And I say, I will be pleased to have issues as a Yoruba man, just as the Welsh has their own issues in their own small nation that is not up to a state in the southwest of what is known as Nigeria today. It is coming up to 27 minutes past 1800 hours from Star Radio UK. I say good evening if you're watching us from different part of Africa. Good evening if you're watching us from Europe, Asia, and you are live with me as I take you through that journey. And the question I'm asking tonight is, Nigerian democracy, fragile, can collapse anytime. And I'm going to be going through that interview that one of the senior advocate of Nigeria, Dr. Olisa Agbakoba, gave to one of the media just about a few days ago. A lot of questions was asked during that interview. I might not go through everything, but what I want us to have is to have some of the background to why those that are campaigning for self-determination is not just because of nothing more than the fact that the British Empire took away our identity, took away who we are as indigenous people, and gave us a country. And I'm not sure whether we can give country to the British citizen by changing their identity. And that same goes with those campaigning for the Biafra nation. Next month is going to be a very, very important month, especially for the Yorubas, because it will be the month that a lot of activities will kick in. Once again, my name is Olayomi Koiki, and I say good evening to you. The question that was asked is, Nigeria democracy fragile, can collapse anytime, Agba Koba. And this was dated 20th of November 2022, which is just about less than 10 days ago. I'm going to go through some of the questions that was asked, and we will then review before the end of the program that are we going to be able to sustain in Nigeria going into 2023? Are we going to see a new president in Nigeria come 2023? Or are we seeing the end of Nigeria just as we saw the end of the Soviet Union in 1991? A very good evening and welcome once again. Let's go through it. Former President of the Nigerian Bar Association, Dr. Olisa Agbakoba, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, shares his thoughts with one of the media in Nigeria about the Nigeria democracy, 2023 elections, among other issues. Nigeria has different issues, and one of those issues is what the British did by amalgamating more than 370 plus ethnic groups and call it a nation. But today they have a smaller nation within the United Kingdom known as Wales, which is not even up to the population of Osun State, who decide and determine who becomes a nation or a country. And just for the benefit of those that are asking that, is the Yoruba right to be a country? Are we ripe enough to be a country of our own? And when we become a country, how do we have everything it takes in terms of the structure? And that is why I asked the question prior to today, that for us to have a country, there are some indication that gives a country. And if we are meant to ask, just as asking whether Wales is a country, how do we give the definition of a country? And how do we give a definition to an average layman? According to the dictionary, a nation with its own government occupying a particular territory. Because when we look back to this particular map that is going to pop up behind me, as we say good evening to our engineers, good evening to all the presenters on Star Radio UK. You can watch me live here every Wednesday from 1800 hours to 2200 to 2000 hours, which is about 8 or 8:30 p.m. every Wednesday. When we look at these map known as the map of Nigeria, there was nothing called Nigeria up to 1914. But what we do know is the British Empire met something when they came prior to the 1897. Because the reason why I've gone back to 1897 is because of the latest update coming from the British Museum, not the British Museum, but one of the smaller museums in the southeast that is now returning the Benin bronze that was removed by force in 1897 by some of the British soldiers that were currently in that kingdom, in Benin Kingdom, or your empire, Ijebu Kingdom, and so many other kingdoms that were scattered in what is now called Nigeria today. They were not just stolen, but they were removed by force. And just after 125 years, we are still trying to negotiate 6 out of the 77 or 72 treasury of those Benin bronze. We're going to come back to that later. But I want to let you to look at the map behind me if you're watching me from any African country and get the fact that there is nothing called Nigeria prior to 1897, when the Benin bronze was actually removed by force by the British Empire during that era. And when we look at 1897 up to 1914, that is 17 years interval. So we literally can say that between 17 years, the British, after 17 years from 1897, then called us Nigeria. So there was nothing called Nigeria prior to that. Once again, a very good evening. It is Wednesday edition of the Star Radio UK, your finest African and Caribbean radio station in London. And my name is Olayomi Koiki. It is important that those calling themselves Nigeria needs to now prepare their mind that there are some indigenous people that will pull out of Nigeria, and that union will completely have to be dissolved. Countries have been dissolved in the past. But how do we understand what a country is? Is Nigeria truly a country? Before I go back into the senior advocate of Nigeria, Dr. Olisa Agbakoba, we all know that Nigeria is not a country. Nigeria has multiple different indigenous people that was locked together, and today, being the 30th day of November, next month will be an important month for the Yoruba people as they are gearing up to get their exit from that union. And it is going to happen with a lot of different activities that will be coming from Benin Republic when those information are relayed back to us. As the Biafra are also saying that their union with Nigeria has been forced upon them and they are also pulling out. According to the dictionary, a nation with its own government occupying a particular territory. A country can also be defined as a geographical region with defined boundaries and a distinct national and political entity. Those Yoruba campaigners are not politicians, and they are likewise not campaigning for a political post. Being a member of the APC or PDP or the Labour Party or any of the political party in Nigeria today does not give them the guarantee of that territory, because that territory does not belong to them. The territory belongs to the indigenous people, but the current situation that we have that will eventually lead to the collapse of the democracy that has been actually forced on us since 1999, using all kind of different tactics to renew that 4 years since 1999 will eventually have to collapse. And the world must prepare for a new nation that is about to be birthed. A distinct territorial body that may be an independent sovereign state or a larger state, a non-sovereign or formally sovereign political diversion. And if I go back now into more of that interview, he was asked, you played a prominent role in the protest against the annulment of June 12, 1993. How has this cancellation of that election affected Nigerian democracy, with a question mark? This is the response of Dr. Olisa Agbakoba, and he says, and I quote, "That was a very good election. The election was very free and very fair, and most Nigerians believe that the chief MK Abiola was the popular candidate with the clear mandate to deliver on what President Olusegun Obasanjo has called the dividends of democracy. Unfortunately, the victory of Abiola was aborted by the military. How it has affected Nigeria is that we still have the belief that our elections are not free and fair, and that there are forces that control it." I want you to take note of that word, forces. So if any Nigerians is thinking that a PDP or APC or Labour Party will give you the democracy that you want, you've got to also remember that they are what we call the external factor that are operating outside Nigeria and will not allow a free and fair election in the first place, not to talk about giving you a free democracy. We saw as an example, if I take you back to the NSAS, what took place during the Lekki Tollgate NSAS was that the youth were eventually killed by the Nigerian security. But we saw that part of the weapons and part of the, part of what the police were using was also money that was coming from the UK. We had a petition for those that put those petitions, and 100,000. There was a debate at the House of Parliament here in UK, and I'm not sure if any changes has happened. Star Radio UK, it is your finest African and Caribbean radio station in London, as we are reviewing the interview that was granted to Dr. Olisa Agbakoba, the senior advocate of Nigeria, and the question is, Nigeria democracy, is it going to be the final part? Let's go forward a little bit. However, it has affected Nigeria is that we still have the belief that our elections are not free and fair, and that there are forces that control it. It was only until the time of Attairu Jiga that people began to have more confidence in the electoral process. I'm not sure whether people have that, in as much as we saw, the energy among the youth, all saying that 2023 will be a change of a new government. But the question is, will that give you the kind of democracy you want without the intervention from the international community that are the stakeholder of Nigeria today? But that confidence is still challenged by Abiola's election annulment. So I think to that extent, annulment of the June 12, 1993 election has affected the confidence of Nigerians to want to go and vote with the belief that their vote will count. Many Nigerians feel that their vote don't count, and that is not good for democracy. The question then is, who thinks that your 2023 election will give you that confidence? Because as much as you might want to have Peter Obi, for those that are campaigning to believe that Peter Obi will give you that confidence, that election will eventually be rigged, and that election might be rigged in favor of the APC. And if that is favoring the APC that has been in the government, we have saw what has happened in the last 8 years of the same government that was brought in the hope of change, the next level. And we now saw, what has happened in the last 8 years of a failed government that have not just allowed the influx of terrorists into Nigeria, giving Nigeria what we now call the number 6 when it comes to the Global Terrorism Index, and Nigeria being the number 1 when it comes to the capital poverty of the world, with 133 million Nigerians today in abject poverty. This is what the APC government have brought in. And if you're thinking that you're going to bring in the PDP, let us remember that the 16 years from when Obasanjo took the power without thinking of the 1999 Constitution, it was also a big failure. So an average Nigerian is completely lost in the ocean. They are not demanding to know why the British government brought us together when we don't speak the same language, we don't have the same identity, and we could have been a nation even as a small, even from the Kanuri that is less than 1 million. Because evidence have shown in the world that we live today that we have smaller countries that are operating as a country of their own, and they are running properly with or without being a member of the United Nations. Once again, a very good evening and welcome to Star Radio UK, your finest African and Caribbean radio station in London. Good evening again to my producer. Good evening to my beautiful mother that have joined. Again, let us remind ourselves that we have countries around the world that is not even up to the population of some of us that are saying that we should keep Nigeria. Are you thinking that you will get a free and fair election as we have got it before in 1993? And what is giving you that impression? What gives you that hope, that the hope that they are bringing out to you on the table from all the political aspirants? Are you going to get that free and fair election, or are you going to get the tactical election where some part of the Igbo, as we saw in the last election, were not allowed to vote in Alimosho, as an example that I witnessed myself when I was on the ground, as an observer. Where those in the north, we just saw the killing of a woman representing the Labour Party in Kaduna. This is not a country. It is all brought together to lock every potential of the indigenous people rather than us having our own separate nation, and we can have a border that is much not porous as the porous border we have in Nigeria. We can talk about the economy. We can talk about the identity of the real criminals among us. But today, all we have is get your PVC and vote your own individual candidate. The only election that has been free and fair up to today is the 1993 election. So what is giving the youth the impression that a 2023 election will be much better? Let's go back to what the Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Dr. Olisa Agbakoba, is saying. You will see many Nigerians feel that their vote don't count, and that is not good for democracy. And let me give you some background of countries that are smaller in unit. Montenegro is not up to 700,000. It is only 621,718. When you look at East Timor is 1.3 million. When you look at Palua is a country that got their independent from the United States of America in 1994 with just 18,000 people. When you go back again and look at Eritrea also is a country with a population of 6 million. When you go back to Slovakia, what we called, they got their separation, which was one of the most peaceful way of what we call the Velvet divorce. The union between the all ethnic groups in Nigeria is not going to give you a better democracy come 2023. Slovakia is 5.4 million. Once again, a very good evening and welcome to Star Radio UK. You will see the number of people voting, or the percentage of voting, is quite low. I think that has been the impact, and it is beginning to die down, but very, very slowly. It is almost 30 years now, and we are still feeling the annulment of Abiola's election. If we are still feeling the annulment of Abiola's election, the late Chief MK Abiola, do you think that any of these political parties will give you the peace of mind? As we know today, none of your state governors, even the newest governor that has been given the the sworn in Osun State, will not be able to have a state police, because the 1999 fraudulent constitution, a military diktat, Decree 24, as we know it. And this was what the former president Olusegun Obasanjo used, including the remaining part of those that have become the president, from the late Yaradua to the former president Jonathan, and the current president and the former president and the current president Buhari, Muhammad Buhari. So who is giving you a democracy when your constitution is not even valid in the first place? We'll come back to that again. Once again, a very good evening and welcome. Let us also remember that we are circulated. There's what we call the boundary, where from Chad to Niger, coming from any of these Burkina Faso down, it is all porous border that allow the influx of those that we know and we don't know to have become part and citizen of Nigeria, whether they have the Nigerian passport or not, because we don't know who is who that is living among us, and that is why there's so much uncertainty in Nigeria today. Since 30 years now, and we are still feeling the annulment of the Abiola's election, and I think that has affected our democratic experiment as played out. The next question was asked, do you think MK Abiola would have been a good president if the military dictator had allowed the conclusion of the process? 6:46 p.m. London, where it is Wednesday edition of the Niger Voices, and I say good evening to all our listeners and viewers around the globe. His answer was, I wouldn't know. That is the entire speculation. Nobody would have known whether the late Chief MK Abiola would have given us a good government, but since the former dictator Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida, that all the politicians are still going to bow in his own wheelchair where he sits down in his mansion in Mina just to get his blessing. You will wonder whether you will get a country. Agbakoba was asked the question whether he thinks the late Chief MK Abiola would have been a good president if the military dictator of Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida had not destroyed what would have given Nigerians hope. 93. I wouldn't know. That is an entire speculation. But I think that from the presidential manifesto of hope, 93 for Nigeria, I feel it would have, but I cannot tell because he never became the president. Now let's go to the next one. There's what we call the human right in Nigeria. And that human right is being played out on a daily basis by this current government known as the APC that is in power. And they've actually abused the human right of Nigerians. The latest human right that we can talk about is not just about the one that we have been seeing on the social media of the wife of the president picking up a Nigerian for calling her out on Twitter. Remember, before we go into that particular story, that up to today, nobody knows where Daddy Yatta is. Daddy Yatta was a critique of the Kaduna State Governor, El Rufai. But yet, he has been picked up, dead or alive. Nobody knows where Daddy Yatta is. So the question about how will you rate Nigeria in terms of the human right protection? Nigerians do not have human rights in the first place. Because if there was a human right, an average Nigerian that would love to put on a Biafra outfit will not be picked up by the DSS when there are so many other activities that the DSS could be engaged with. If there was a human right, Jumoke Oyeleke would not have been killed by the Nigerian Lagos police last year, July 1st, when we took down to Lagos State a peaceful protest. If there was a human right, so many Nigerians would not have been killed from the negligence of a country. If we have a human right, Nigerians would have seen the benefit of that. But what we have today is we have a government that is abusing the right of the citizen. Should we have a nation? you will be able to challenge the government. Nobody today can challenge the present government of Nigeria. And if you look at the image behind me, that is the wife of the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Aisha Buhari, that have not just abused her power, she has also abused the human rights of the young Nigerian that was not just picked up from his campus as a university student. He was taken straight into Aso Rock, where in the presence of the wife of the president, this young boy was abused. And the question a lot of Nigerians is asking is, do we still think that a new democracy in 2023 will give way to a better human right in Nigeria? There has been a lot of Nigerians reacting to these incidents. And the question is Aisha Buhari, the wife of the president, can she face persecution for ordering arrest, assault of a Nigerian student over a tweet Police Service Commissioner Najatu? Aisha Buhari, according to what we have, used his AD camp known as Usman Shugaba to arrest a 23-year-old student for tweeting that the wife of the president was feeding fat on the poor people's money. Is it wrong to say so? Because if you look at what Aisha Buhari looks like before he became the president's wife in 2015, you will realize that there has been a lot of changes. And that is the difference. That on your left-hand side of the screen was when she came to power with the husband in 2015. So definitely, when you look on the right-hand side, she has become fat when average Nigerians today, from the image that will be coming on the screen, are driving motorcycle, being kidnapped, killed, and the investors of some Nigerians to come back home, just as our brother, our uncle that was killed by the Fulani terrorist, just as also our brother and sister that came from Maryland, US, and had a young Nigerian that was eventually killed as well. And just as we have seen in the past that even the human rights have been like that when the late Delegiwa was killed by Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida, the former president, military dictator in Nigeria, because the envelope, the letter bomb that was received by Delegiwa says, and I quote, from the president. Just as the human right of Nigeria was not given a better security, knowing fully well that the lives of Nigeria was in danger, they allowed the continuation of the road services from Abuja to Kaduna until innocent Nigerians were killed and their right to life was taken away. The former Minister of Transportation, Rotimi Amechi, said after that incident on the March 28th, that Kaduna train attack, I warned that lives will be lost. And yes, life was lost because Dr. Chinelo was just about 72 hours to have left Nigeria. These are some of the questions that is now being put to the senior advocate of Nigeria. Not just that alone, as we are celebrating, the post-mortem of the late Bamishe today. Bamishe boarded a BRT in Lagos State, and her right to life was taken away, and justice is not yet been served. And that is why we are saying that, is this the Nigeria that you are dreaming of? Just as again, Chinero was killed by the DSS in Nigeria. A right to life was also removed. We would not forget what happened right inside the premises of Chief Sunday Adeyemo Igboho's house when Adogon and Alhaji Fatai were killed by the Nigerian security, and as we speak today, their family does not even have the right to the bodies. If you're watching us from African countries, these are some of the reasons that the indigenous people are saying that our right to remain in Nigeria is no longer valid. So let me go back and quickly give you what was the response and the answer to what the Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Dr. Olisa Agbakoba, had to say. The question was, how will you rate Nigeria in terms of human rights protection? This was his response. The problem with Nigeria is that we are not really a democratic country. Then who is giving us the assurance that after 2023 election, there will be a democracy in Nigeria? Because if, as of today, after 20 years, since 1999, we've not been able to get it right, what is giving you the assurance that another 8 years of any of the contestants of this election will give you the right to life, will give you the right to who you want to be as a Nigerian, knowing fully well that there was nothing called Nigeria before 1897, because evidence have also shown, based on the stolen, forced by gunpoint removal of the Benin Bronze by the British military in 1897. There was nothing called Nigeria. It was after 17 years of that removal of the Benin Bronze that was stolen that we got what we now know as Nigeria in 1914 amalgamation. This is Star Radio UK, your finest African and Caribbean radio station in London. It is not enough to say that we are democratic. We all know that in 1999, the military government gave way to what pretend to be a democratic government, but the truth is, we are not. I want you to take note of that. The military government that is still controlling Nigeria behind the scene, where we see all the politicians dressing up in their beautiful native agbada, but knowing fully well that the northern part of Nigeria controls the military. The northern part of Nigeria controls almost all the security architect of Nigeria, but yet there's still so many Nigerians that are facing so much insecurity. And that is why, if I take us back to what the leader of the social cultural group Afenifere, Chief Ayo Adebanjo, says, presidency, the North cannot dictate to others. This was in an article on the 22nd of November as well, when the leader of the Yoruba social cultural group Afenifere, Chief Ayo Adebanjo, has said the North cannot dictate to the rest of the country who becomes the president. Adebanjo spoke on Monday during a public lecture theme, Nationalism, Nation Building in Nigeria History. He said it was said that the Southeast must come to negotiate with the North because politics is a game of numbers, knowing fully well that the British government inflated the censor in 1957-58 before the 1959 election that gave room to the North having more in numbers. Let's go back to the response again. It is that truth that we are confronting, so that you find that the government of the day, going back to even the former president Olusegun Obasanjo, doesn't necessarily respect the views of the people. So as a Nigerian, for those of you that are Nigerians, what is going to give you the view of having a good right to life? So a democratic country where you have leaders of the day, the leaders of the different political parties, from the president down, their response to the way people feel about how they are governed. He went to give an example here in UK. In the United Kingdom, when Prime Minister Liz Truss was seen to have done badly, the voice of the people removed her from office. I don't know whether in our democracy that can happen. I don't know of anybody in a political office in Nigeria since 1999 who has resigned on the grounds of public resentment. I don't know whether our democracy has reached a stage where our voices really count, because I don't see that our politicians, from the presidency down to the local government chairman, respond to the way the people of Nigeria want them to be. So the question will be, can we say that the politicians in different levels of government are the servant of the people? I don't think so, and I don't think so myself. But there are so many millions of Nigerians now that are running up and down like something is lost in their pocket, hoping that they will get a good government in 2023. But knowing fully well that Nigeria, from the view of the others, will dissolve. How is the question some are asking? There will be a super rally. There will be a different announcement that will be coming out during that super rally. It will all happen at the final month, which is going to be in December. Let's go back again. The police have been fingered in this area. No day passes without the Nigerian lamenting on how his right has been abused by the police. How can right abuses by the police be discouraged? You can't discourage it. The more we remain in Nigeria as Nigerians, you would have police force, military, navy, all different security, even some of those newer ones like LASMA, Amotekun, using their outfit to abuse you as a Nigerian. And that is why we are saying that for some of us, we can no longer tolerate that. For some of us, we can no longer sit back and do nothing. It is our right to self-determination, and that right will be used properly. It is now coming up to exactly to 6 minutes past 1900 hours. My name is Olayomi Koiki, and you're watching Niger Voices on Star Radio UK, your finest African and Caribbean radio station in London. Remember to join me every Monday to Friday with Archie and Frank as we discuss the news update from Nigeria. But Wednesday, this is how we roll, and this is how we take you through what you need to know when it comes to issues affecting Nigerians, issues affecting the indigenous people that have been locked in Nigeria, and as the people that are not even aware of some of the atrocities, damages that the colony, the empire have done as far back as stealing by force our Benin bronze in 1897. 125 years after, we've only been given 6 out of the 72. We still have about 900 of different treasuries held in different museums here in UK and the British Museum. Some of you will never come to see those because your chances of getting a student visa or a work visa or a visit visa will be very, very slim. Even though we know, according to the CBN Governor Godwin Emefiele, that says, and I quote, 66,000 Nigerians were given student visa by the British government. What they are doing actually is keep those students here, retain some of them, send the rest back, and then keep their own economy running. We can also have a nation as small as Wales, as a Yoruba nation, and then run a government that takes out of the people, respect the views of the people, from the human right of the people, making sure that the elderly doesn't have to go up and down to different NGOs to get food in the morning, making sure that your life will be secure within the territorial border of what we call the Yoruba nation. Because Nigeria as of today, before giving you the answer to what Olisa Agbakoba had to say, these all happened in less than 48 hours in Nigeria. Some of the atrocities, the crime. I got this about 5 hours ago. Gunmen suspected to be terrorists invaded a family house of a divisional police officer in Katsina State, the state of the President Muhammadu Buhari. Again, you will wonder whether we even have a government in place. All I can say is, if you are still a Nigerian, you are already likely to remain in abject poverty. 62 trillion is the debt of Nigeria. It will take 40 years for any repayment. But we have the Minister for Information, Alhaji Lai Mohammed, now advising Nigerians traveling to US and UK to be conscious of insecurity in those countries. But what he has not told you is the average Lagos to Ibadan Expressway has become a high blood pressure to so many Nigerians or those that are applying that route. But you have your President Muhammadu Buhari's home state that happened 2 days ago, less than 48 hours. Gunmen suspected to be terrorists invaded the family house of the divisional police officer for Dusi Division, Katsina State. Get this, killed his mother, killed his younger brother. All this happened on Monday, 28th of November 2022. Let's go back to some of the atrocities of the insecurity happening in Nigeria. Again, your governor in Ogun State says, I will deploy patrol teams and drones to tackle kidnappers. Really? Why now? Is it because the election is coming and they need your vote? Why is Dapo Abiodun, the governor of Ogun State, and Seyi Makinde, the governor of Oyo State, now looking into to deploy patrol teams and drones to tackle kidnappers? Why have they not done so in the last 4 years of being in the government? With all the billions allocated on a monthly basis for security fund and nobody knows what they've done with it. Again, a lot of insecurity in Nigeria and uncertainty, because if you do not have a state police, there will be all sort of criminality that the Inspector General of Police cannot look into. Last month, nabbed 2 suspected kidnappers and rescue victims. This was 9 hours ago. 2 suspected arrested for attempting murder in Ekiti State. There is just so much insecurity in what we call Nigeria today. You want to get the next news? Again, the people and residents of Gida Goga village in Marudon local government area of Zamfara State have to pay a notorious kidnapper, Bello Tauji, 20 million naira to forestall attack on their community. This is the country known as Nigeria today. Imagine that you now within your community raise 20 million naira, which is quite a lot of money when we convert that to dollar or pound sterling today, just to make sure that terrorists do not attack your community. This is the Nigeria that we are living today. This is the Nigeria that has been forced on every single Nigerian by the British government in 1914. Nigeria needs to now dissolve. A new nation needs to be birthed. And this can only happen if everybody put the energy into the remaining part of what we're going to be the super rally, the engagement of different activities when those announcements comes through within the next couple of weeks. Once again, my name is Olayomi Koiki, and this is Star Radio UK, your finest African and Caribbean radio station in London. Let's go back to this interview that was guaranteed to one of the newspaper in Nigeria by the Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Dr. Olisa Agbakoba. The Nigerian police force is very inefficient. That is the problem, and part of the problem of the police is that the federal government controls the policing structure. We have an Inspector General of Police sitting in Abuja. I don't see how the IGP can efficiently superintendent over policing issues in the Nigeria from 774 local government. While I was looking at Wales yesterday, they have about 20 local government or boroughs compared to Osun State that has 4.5 million population with just 30 local government. Are you now thinking that crimes, whether a petty crime, whether a terrorism crime, whether crime that does not allow you to function fully in Osun State with 30 local government compared to a country that is 3 million and they have 20 local government to take care of the people, and the biggest local government in Wales is Cardiff with about less than 400,000 population. So because he cannot be an effective manager of the policing Daura, where we just saw the news of that divisional police officer that the mother and the younger brother was killed, in Onitsha, where there's a lot of genocide taking place and there's nobody talking about it, in Ogbaru or in Ogbomoso, where we saw one of our brothers that returned from Maryland was killed the same day after money was paid. How does the IGP control their misbehavior is the question mark. So there is no proper control of the police, and that has left the police at whatever level doing what they like. And that is why if you travel around Nigeria today, the police are likely to extort you. And if you fail, you are likely to be killed. And that also led to the EndSARS during the 2020, when a lot of Nigerians came out to say, EndSARS, end police brutality. 3 years after that, or 4 years after that, I'm not sure whether anything of such has reduced. Rather, what we have seen is more atrocities, more criminality by the same security that are meant to protect Nigerians. This is Star Radio UK, your finest African and Caribbean radio station in London. The local government, so the abuse you see, which you correctly identify, is caused by the police structure. And that is why people have said it is important to have state policing structures. And you cannot get that again because the 1999 Constitution does not permit any state governor, even if you have the money like Rivers State, Lagos State, to have your own state police, you will not be able to do so because the fraudulent document, the military dictate that was put together by Abdulsalam Abubakar and the rest of them and forced that on Nigeria. Obasanjo allowed it, Yaradua the late allowed it, Jonathan allowed it, and the current government is going to allow it since 8 years. And if anybody is thinking 2023, they will still be using the same 1999 Constitution. They need to transfer policing powers to the state. And I also think that it is not enough to transfer policing power to the state government. Policing power needs to be transferred to the local government. If I need the police to arrive at my door right now, all I need to do is dial 999 and I'll be asked whether I need a police, ambulance, or fire services. And it will just take 10 minutes, if not less, for any of those to arrive. And they're right to my doorstep, which is in my borough, as against Nigeria today. When you dial 112, I think that is what Lagos State is using. I'm not sure whether they can arrive in any of the Ajegunle if there's a crime going on there, or they can even arrive somewhere in Lekki in 10 minutes, especially with the bad infrastructure you have in Lagos State. For instance, in the United States, policing power is at the root of the local government. The local government there is called the county. The county in America is responsible for whatever crimes occurs. Yes, we know crimes occurs here in UK, in America, in Europe, but they are also being tackled and also being investigated. The local government the county in America is responsible for whatever crimes occur. So crimes in Ikoyi are the responsibility of the chief of police of Ikoyi local government. The Inspector General of Police of Nigeria cannot interfere with the decision of the chief of police of the Ikoyi local government and how it does its work. Therefore, we need to have 774 chief of police in Nigeria in different local government, from Osun State to Ondo State to Akwa Ibom to Anambra to Kaduna to any part of Nigeria up to Adamawa. Policing will be more effective, which is why a lot of people have said that the only way to make policing effective is to make policing a matter that is a state and also local government. All these are good to read out, but in reality, this is not going to happen even if you have a new government in place in 2023. So the question then is, why should we keep Nigeria? And who are we keeping Nigeria for in the first place? For those that say we should go and get the PVC. I'm not sure you will get a state police by any of these candidates should they become the president of Nigeria come 2023. The next question, are you not worried that even some lawyers who try to protect Nigerians are insulted by men in uniform? Because the British government have not actually explained to us that the reason why they gave power and supported a particular ethnic group against the others, because we know with the fact and evidence now that power was given to the North, and I'm not sure that a lawyer here will be abused by a metropolitan police or the police officer in Wales, which is just about 3 million in population. Clearly, this is the answer of Dr. Olisa Agbakoba, the senior advocate of Nigeria. Clearly, if a lawyer is affronted by a policeman in the course of his official duty, not only a lawyer, a journalist, or indeed any Nigerian who in the course of his ordinary peaceful engagement is carrying out his lawful businesses is assaulted by the police, that is affront. That is an assault on democracy. But Nigerians do not have democracy today. But the reason for that is exactly what I just told you. If the police don't feel that they are under the authority, or that the authority that controls them is very far in Abuja, they are sitting in Zone 2 or Kanu or Jos or Ogbaru, then there is no fear of my boss will do so. And so if I do so, I'm so wrong. So the process of policing is the reason why police conduct themselves in a type of bad behavior like we see all the time. And the good thing now is a lot of Nigerians are using their little smartphone to record some of these atrocities that we have witnessed in the last few years back, since the Nigerians have become much more understanding of the importance of a 30 seconds video where a police officer is extorting your money from you, from the Lagos State to Benin Republic. We have about 100 checkpoints where the security from the military, the Navy, are extorting you every day, and nobody seems to say anything. And if you even get to be caught recording them, you will become more in soup. But there's been cases where Nigerians have recorded them clean. It has come on the social media. Some of them have been dealt with, but we cannot be using one as a gauge when we have a unit that can be done when we break down the country to a smaller unit. I'm going to move a little bit forward. A few days ago, the chairman of the House of Representatives Committee on Judiciary, Luke Onifik, said they have approved 150 billion budget for the judiciary for 2023 and 2024. Will these amounts solve the challenges that the judiciary has been facing, particularly the financial autonomy that the judiciary has been clamoring for? I don't know, because I am not in the judiciary, so I don't know exactly what their budgeting requirements are. But what I will say is that the judiciary needs money. So if the budget of the judiciary has been increased, then I think that is a good thing. But it will mean that they are able to discharge their function more efficiently, more effectively. That is the general good news, because the problem has always been that the judiciary is not well funded, and that encourages them to not do their job properly. If you pay the chief judge of Nigeria, that is the CGN, 300,000 naira a month, how can he be effective? So any news about increase of the budget of the judiciary is welcome, and one hopes that the funding that the judiciary will receive will translate to more efficient judiciary process, just as the justice for Bamishe is still in question as we speak today. Some high places Nigerians have a way of disobeying court order. Again, it indicates that Nigerians are not the same. If you are wealthy, you are likely going to get out of any court case in Nigeria today. But if you are an average Nigerian, you are likely to remain in the prison. And we have seen a lot of Nigerians being kept in the prison for years for the injustice that has taken place in that contraction called Nigeria today. The answer is obvious. A society where people don't obey court order is a society that is destined for ruin. Because what governs a society, no matter who you are, is the rule of law. But one thing is, the rule of law is not in Nigeria today. And that starts with the 1999 fraudulent constitution. The rule of law determines what the public does. If you do wrong, it doesn't matter how highly placed you are, you will obey the rule of law. But I don't think the rule of law goes in line as we speak right now, when the wife of the President Muhammadu Buhari, using a position to suppress the injustice, the oppression between herself and a young Nigerian. That is what is currently taking place today. And let me give, for those of you that do not understand the background of this story, whether you're watching me from Kenya, Ghana, Togo, South Africa, Libya, I say good evening to you. Najatu Muhammad, a commissioner in the Police Service Commission, PSC, has called for the prosecution of the Nigerian First Lady, Aisha Buhari, for beating up and ordering the detention of this young boy, a final year student of the Federal University, Dr. Aminu Mohammed, as well as a former social media aide, Zainab Kazim. According to report that policemen acting on the orders of the AD camp to Mrs. Aisha Buhari, the wife of the President Muhammadu Buhari, the Federal Republic of Nigeria, arrested this young boy, 23-year-old student, for tweeting that the wife of the president was feeding fat on the poor people's money. The tweet, which was posted in Hausa, the tweet which was accompanied by a photograph of Mrs. Buhari, loosely translate as "Mama has eaten poor people's money and she's now full." However, on the 8th of November, 23-year-old Mohammed was picked up by the security operatives on the campus, was reportedly beaten up following his arrest around noon. Mrs. Kazim, on her part, which is another person entirely, was also arrested around noon. Mrs. Kazim, on her part, was arrested and beaten into coma for allegedly leaking the secret. Can you imagine, the shenanigans that is happening in Aso Rock today, where the wife of the president thinks that she's just as big as Pofun? And this is what we are saying to those of you that are Yorubas, that is this the 2023 that you're looking up to? Whether it is the APC, the PDP, remember that the same contestant of the APC brought in the President Muhammadu Buhari, that you are now witnessing all these atrocities, from the economy that has gone into bust, where about $3 billion that was coming into the remittance of the CBN monthly from the NNPC when Jonathan was there is no longer coming in, where you have become more poorer, as a bag of rice is now 48 to 50,000 naira, where a lot of you today are struggling as a country that we have been told that is the 6th largest crude oil. We are not producing it, so the word producing is a fallacy. You are actually not producing anything because all your refinery has gone into not functioning. And that means the UK in Southampton and other countries around the world is helping Nigeria today to refine not just the ones that we know, but also so many illegal pipe that has been seen rather in the last couple of weeks and months. Is this the Nigeria of your dream? It is not about leadership. It is a purpose reason that the British Empire brought us together and named it in Nigeria, knowing fully well that there are some of us that do not want to run the same pace like the Northerners are doing today. Because if we go back to what the Western region gave us during the late Chief Obafemi Awolowo, we will realize the speed of education among the Yorubas. We will see, the development, as somebody was explaining yesterday, that if you go back to the Obafemi Awolowo University, you will realize, the kind of texture that has been used to build those universities. The cocoa house is still standing. But the Yorubas are campaigning for a candidate of their choice, which is their right. But the question is, the same candidate brought in the current government that we are all experiencing today, that has now not just abused the office, but have also make you to become the capital, the poverty capital of the world. 133 million Nigerians are all living in abject poverty because you do not have $2 or equivalent to 2,000 naira to feed yourself and your family. So that is the background to the story about the wife of the president. So taking us back now to that question, whether the rule of law is operating properly in Nigeria. The rule of law determines what the public does. If you do wrong, it does not matter how highly placed you are, you will obey the rule of law. Let us look at President Trump according to Dr. Olisa Agbakoba, the senior advocate of Nigeria. He tried everything to remain in power, but the strong institution in America, and don't give us this impression that Nigeria does not have a strong institution. Nigeria cannot have a strong institution because we are not speaking the same language and we are not operating on the same identity. It was only brought on us by forced amalgamation that the Yorubas are now going to dissolve out before 2023, even though some are very, very skeptical. Some of the medias campaigning for the Yorubas do not have the good mind for the Yorubas. So if you're one of those that are still watching them, you will get more stress and blood pressure because they are not in line to have a Yoruba nation. And some will say, how do you get a Yoruba nation when you have a government in place? Countries around the world have removed themselves from a government, and the Yorubas will do the same thing, and no country have the right to stop it, because the Yoruba was a kingdom before the British Empire wanted to destroy that kingdom. And that is why people like the late Chief Obafemi Awolowo was not given the full access during the independent era. I don't think we have democracy. What we have are civilians, just as you can look at them behind me, who have taken over from the military. But the civilians in government are not necessarily Democrats, so they are different from the military because they are not wearing khaki uniform. In terms of whether they obey the law is not something that they understand, and therefore people don't obey it. And that is why when you look at the court case of the Chief Sunday Igboho in Ibadan, where a rule of law has been scattered and it was not given that judgment. When we look at the court case of the leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, where the court has actually ruled that he is not found to be guilty of any of the charges that the federal government has labeled and charged on him. but we still have a government that is not abiding to the rule of law. Even though Nnamdi Kanu was kidnapped, renditioned back to Nigeria, and it was meant to have even been compensated. The question to those of you that are campaigning is you thinking in your mind that it's got to do with institution in Nigeria? No, we are all different ethnic groups and different identity, and it is time to say the way it is, that Nigeria is not a country. Nigerians must start to understand this quickly should you want a better life, just as some of us have that opportunity and privilege to human rights, to the rule of law. If I have to commit an offense here, I would have to be given the right to the law. If you have a judgment against a government agency, they won't obey. We have a government that have disobeyed all kind of court proceeding. So when you have this type of chaos, society cannot grow. So we need to come to the point where the government of the day understand that they are bound by the rule of law. And if there are judgment of court against them, they are bound to obey. That is not happening. And it is not going to happen in 2023. So if anybody behind me thinking that you would have a rule of law, even if Peter Obi becomes the president, you will be joking. Even if Tinubu becomes the president, Sowore becomes the president, Atiku becomes the president, or Kwankwaso, or any one of them, you will not get the rule of law. Nigeria is not a functioning country. It was designed not to work. The template of Nigeria is operated outside Nigeria. The police in UK do not abuse you, but in Nigeria, the same country has not said much. And when we talk about the NSAS as an example, not much has been done by the British government. Rather, all we saw was they also played some role in delivering some equipment to the Nigerian police that was using those equipment either to suppress an average Nigeria. What should be done to stop disobedience of court order is to break up Nigeria, or dissolve Nigeria, or dissolution of Nigeria, or disamalgamate Nigeria. A 2023 election will not give you that rule of law. Once again, a very good evening and welcome to those of you that have joined us across the globe. Strong concept of the rule of law. You need to have good leaders. Where are you going to get those good leaders in Nigeria today? Who understand that the only way that Nigeria can grow on path of democracy is to obey the law. Any government that is in power that doesn't want to obey the law will be a government that understands that it can do what it likes. We call this impunity, and impunity has been going on in Nigeria since 20 years of the democracy. When a government decides that they can obey or disobey the constitution or judgment of court, then the government is not really basing its power on the vote of the people. You can see now the various politicians are going around. This is Dr. Olisagbakoba. Bola Tinubu is going around. Atiku Abubakar is going around. Peter Obi is going around. Kwankwaso is going around. And they are all begging you for vote. But the rule of law is not respected by President Muhammadu Buhari today. The rule of law is no longer respected, and that is why an average Nigerian that should have been taken into the process, even if there was a need that he has abused the wife of the president. Rather, he was taken to Aso Rock and molested and beaten, and one was even beaten into coma. That is the government that Tinubu brought to you in 2015, and he is also vying for that same office. Do you think that he will give you the rule of law? Do you think that Atiku, that was under Obasanjo as the vice president, and we saw all he did while he was there? Do you think that Peter Obi, that was the governor of Anambra State, gave the rule of law while he was the governor? The question is in the hands of every Nigerian to decide. That is all what they are doing. And when they say, okay, we vote for Mr. A to become our president, just as they voted President Muhammadu Buhari in 2015, he returned back again, after 4 years, and is now on his last lap. The day he enters, he forget that we put him there. Buhari becomes somebody that is removing meat or whatever he was doing out of his mouth. And I'm sure some of you remember that image. But today, we have a collapsed country. We have a country that inflation has completely crumbled. The government came in and your debt has risen so fast to 62 trillion naira. It will take 40 years plus to pay that back. Nigerians remain the poverty capital. Nigeria remains the poverty capital of the world. 133 million. You cannot even travel around Nigeria without you worried whether you will be kidnapped. These are one reasons, and so many reasons that we're saying, are you sure you have a democracy? When they become the president, they are no longer listening to the people. But you can see Nigerians running after them, whether for their own selfish reasons as well, or they are just excited about the carnival of whatever is happening. What it then does is to use its power to violate our basic right, and then we ask, don't you remember that you were coming to beg us for vote? So the fundamental problem in Nigeria is that politicians don't understand that they are the servant who go to these jobs of president, governor, chairman, local government on the basis of the vote we gave them. You can see President Buhari traveling around the world. This is a president that have spent more time receiving medical treatment in United Kingdom, where so many Nigerians do not have access to the basic healthcare services. 8 months, Nigerians were not going to school. University was completely shut down. Yet, the president, family, have already completed their own education here in the United Kingdom. And they've returned back home, and some of them don't even have a job, but they are controlling better opportunity than an average Nigerian. Bola Tinubu children in US buying house without having a job worth millions of dollars. Atiku children spending so much. And the question is, do you think these individuals, this caliber of people, will give you the opportunity to a rule of law? Think about it for those of you that are campaigning for them. You can never get a good leader because we are not speaking the same language. And English is not our official language. It is a borrowed language that the empire forced on us. Let me move quickly, and I say good evening once again. It is now coming up to 20 minutes before 8 p.m. We're just about almost getting there, and then we will say good evening once again. And to my producer, Mr. Frank David, Mr. Archie, this is Star Radio UK. It is your finest African and Caribbean radio station in London, as I continue to review the fragile democracy in Nigeria. Will it be appropriate? This is the next question so that I can just move swiftly. Will it be appropriate to continue to describe Nigerian democracy as nascent, having been practicing it for the past 23 years? His answer says, it is correct to describe Nigerian democracy as fragile, very fragile. We have a long way from being a democratic nation. The question is, how long do you want to wait where the politicians are stealing staggering amount of money and using you to practice democracy that is not going to work in Nigeria? How long more do you want to suffer in a Nigeria today, knowing fully well that the country will not give you everything that you expect to get? Are you thinking what I'm thinking, or are you still being selfish about calling yourself a Nigeria? Because we all know the word Nigeria itself is a fake. But the politicians are now using you every 4 years, and they come back after that for another 4 years to say, let us give it a try. And you become try your luck until some of you will japa and run out of the country, and you realize exactly what we are saying. We cannot continue to be deceived and allow the politicians to tell us that the democracy will be built in the long run, yet the destruction of the country itself continue to grow on a daily basis. The destructions of the indigenous people, where your land will be removed from you and you might not have the right to that land. We saw that with the waterways. We saw that with all the plans of this particular government that have actually removed their eyes from the genocide happening in the southeast of Nigeria today, where more people of the indigenous Biafrans, to be known, are killed. Where in the southern part of the country, we have now seen more beggars of the Yorubas, where the northerners have now been removed from different positions by the Fulanis. We cannot continue to live in denial, and that is the reason why Nigeria needs to dissolve. Nigeria will not be the first country in the world to be dissolved. Countries around the world have dissolved in the past, and they are living a better life. Nigeria is not going to stand while the indigenous people will do nothing. Just as the Biafra have the right to self-determination, the Hausa have the same right, the Kanuri have the same right, every indigenous people have the same right, because we will not continue to live in denial. Let's go back. It can go either way. A fragile system is the type that can collapse any day. And that is why I have asked with my producer today that as Nigeria democracy collapse, or are we all living in denial until we see the reality on the other mainstream media around the world? Everybody knows that the unity of Nigeria is no longer there. Ethnic card is being played out even as they are contesting, campaigning for the election. But who among us still believe that we have a country? A country that does not respect rule of law. A country that has given birth to all kind of criminality. A country that favors one set or one particular ethnic group against others. That is not a country. Nigeria is not a country. Nigerians must now understand who really we are. Just as the Norwegians know who they are. The Japanese knows who they are. Why are we all shy to embrace our identity as indigenous people as against the identity that has been forced on us? In the next few minutes, I'll be reading some of your comments, but for now, the conversation is, are we seeing the final part of Nigeria? Are we going to witness in our lifetime the collapse of the most populous black nation to give room for the birth of the Biafra nation, for the birth of the Yoruba nation, the Arewa nation, the Middle Belt nation? We can no longer be deceived by the Western world to determine who becomes a country and who doesn't become a country. That lies in the hands of the indigenous people, and that means that we have the right to have our own nation out of what is called Nigeria today. the Wales are playing in the World Cup with less than 3 million population, the Biafra can also be represented in the World Cup in the next 4 years when we have one coming up. Just as the Yoruba can have their own team representing in the World Cup as against being part of Nigeria. And if some of those that wants to keep Nigeria, they have the right to keep the name, but you don't have the right to force every one of us in Nigeria. We would all not tolerate that. It is time that we got to be honest. It is time to let Nigerians know that you are not what you have been told for the last 108 years of the fraudulent amalgamation that was put together by the empire. It is time that Nigerians understand who really you are as your identity, because your identity is not Nigeria. Our identity is based on our language. Our identity is based on our culture. There is no identity for Nigeria. Our identity must now be respected by the international community. Our identity cannot be forced in Nigeria and then we are called Nigeria when so many countries around the world knows that there has been a kingdom prior to 1914 amalgamation. And that is why we are saying to those of you that are still thinking that the campaign to self-determination is a joke, next month, December, will give room to some of those things and question in your heart. Because the Yorubas will move out next month, December, when we call for the super rally. Everyone should just go and brace up. We saw today in Abia State where the protest for the illegal detention of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu by the federal government, despite the appeal court of Abuja and the federal high court Abuja ordered the discharge and acquitted him. That is not a country. What is the offense of Nnamdi Kanu, apart from the fact that the Nigerian government tortured him for 8 good days before bringing him on what we called rendition and kidnapping from Kenya? And even the government knows that. So if anybody is thinking that you can force Nigeria on us come 2023, it is not going to happen, because the right to self-determination will be fully activated. The right for the indigenous people of Biafra will be activated. The right to the Middle Belt will be activated. The politicians knows that our right would never be sustained in what is known as Nigeria today. As we continue to pray for our brother, a father, the man of the people, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, a man that has to be released as quickly as possible so that he can return back to his family. Nnamdi Kanu and IPOB is not a terrorist organization. The only terrorist organization that we know and the international community has confirmed are the ISWAP, the Boko Haram, the ISIS, that have all embedded themselves in our forest, from the north to the southeast to the northeast to the Middle Belt to the southwest to the south-south, where so many innocent people have been killed. We can no longer tolerate that. It is now time that the people of the indigenous people must come out fully so that we can officially have our own independent country. As I speak to you right now, on the screen in front of me, I can confirm to you that there is an ongoing live transmission, and let's see if we can pick a signal on that on Star Radio UK, where the leader of the Yoruba Self-Determination Movement is actually speaking right now. Let's cross over quickly to get what is being said right there. And this is going to be a joint transmission. Let's get a bit of signal from there.
I can send the voice note to come. 10,000 don't we what is the Chelsea Pelebe, what they are so you know far, the value system is no more in their life. But every year we go like
and what we have done now, we have actually joined a live transmission, which is, you will only get, those of you on the Star Radio UK will get the audio. The visual will not be coming up, but you can get the audio. And let's go back to that.
Public, it only allowed for 500 million naira. So, outside, we don't want to very well shit to your nation, Monty, and the Mama shit. This Sunday is okay. Share me a common and come out so room for anything. They want to go to your nation to do it. Is that something that one human being should say to another human being? Fọwọ́ sọ̀yà nípa àwọn tó ń bá yín jà yìí ni o dípò kẹ́ máa sọ̀sọ̀kúsọ. À ń sọ̀rọ̀ pé kí ni ọ̀pọ̀lọpọ̀ ọdún àwọn ọmọ tó ń ṣe yẹn wọ́n ń fún wọn lówó pé kan lọ báyìí wọn náà lọ kúrò mọ́ wọn.
I will try to, translate for the benefit of our other listeners, but for now, that is the leader of the Yoruba, self-determination movement, Professor Banja Akintoye, where we've joined that transmission on Star Radio UK.
Gbà yẹn ni wọ́n decide pé lè ṣe yẹn sáwọn Yorùbá torí àwọn ò ní jà. But a ní ọgbọ́n tá a lè fi mú àwọn Yorùbá, ọgbọ́n tá a fi mú wọn láéláé, ìkan náà lára wọn la máa dì mú pé kó lọ dà wọ́n rú. Á dẹ̀ dà wọ́n rú tá a bá fún lówó dáadáa. Ara àwọn nǹkan tó jà nílẹ̀ nìyẹn o. Nǹkan lára wọn la máa fún lówó pé kó lọ dà wọ́n rú, á dẹ̀ dà wọ́n rú. A nídìí láti yẹra wa lẹ́nu. Ara wọn náà láti máa mú kan tó máa dà wọ́n rú.
Nítorí àkókò ní bàbá wa, ìbéèrè tí àwọn ọmọ yín wá ń béèrè tẹ́mi fẹ́ béèrè torí èmi ò kí ń fíà láti béèrè láti sọ̀rọ̀. Mo respect gbogbo èèyàn ní mi ò bẹ̀rù ẹnikẹ́ni lórí òtítọ́ mo dúró. Mo ń béèrè ìbéèrè yìí on behalf of 60 million of your children, more than 60 million. Àwọn Brazil báyìí wọ́n máa declare Yorùbá Day ní wọ́n á sọ̀rọ̀ nípa ẹ̀. Àwọn ọmọ yìí tó wà ní Brazil wọ́n máa declare Yorùbá Day ní Brazil wọ́n máa sọ̀rọ̀ nípa ẹ̀ lọ́wọ́.
Ìbéèrè tí ó bẹ́ẹ̀ lọ ṣe ojú mi ó ti múra láti lọ bẹ̀.
Glory to God. Ẹ kú ṣẹ́ta. So ìbéèrè tí ó bẹ́ẹ̀ bẹ̀rẹ̀ ni wípé bàbá Yorùbá láǹdì tá à ń sọ yìí ṣé méjì ni torí ẹ̀yin mọ̀ sáyẹ̀ dàgbà jù wá lọ ṣé Yorùbá láǹdì ṣé méjì ni.
Our land, our nation is one of the oldest nations on earth. Our ancestral land is one of the oldest ancestral lands on earth. Our kì í ṣe fèkì kankan. We are the most authentic people in the world.
Tí Yorùbá ò bá jẹ́ méjì, ṣé wọ́n máa ń declare nation lẹ́ẹ̀mejì ni? Wọ́n ní ọmọ yìí kan ti declare nation.
Ẹ kúrò ọmọdé lè ṣeré tó bá wù wọ́n lẹ́yìn pé tó bá wù ọmọdé ni wọ́n lè ṣe. Tó bá wù ọmọdé lè ṣe.
Once again, this is Star Radio UK as we are joining a live transmission from our sister broadcast where the leader of the Yoruba Self-Determination leader is speaking.
Fún yàrá ọ̀rọ̀ mẹ́tẹ̀ mo bẹ̀rẹ̀ mo dìde mo lẹ̀ jíjọ tí mo fẹ́ yọ pé àpẹẹrẹ kẹ́kọ̀ọ́ mo yà ní tèmi.
Ẹ ṣe fún ẹgbẹ́ kí n lọ jọ́ ìnà àwọn aládùúrà o.
Bẹ́ẹ̀ ni sà, dájì nítorí sọ náà nínú ilé níbi tá a wà àwọn méjì péré náà ni wọ́n lọ wọ́n sókè. Ẹ jẹ́ kí wọ́n sáré bèrè ìbéèrè wọn. Béèrè méjèèjì méjèèjì papọ̀ méjèèjì á bèrè ìbéèrè ẹyọ kọ̀ọ̀kan ni o la fún yín ní àyè láti bèrè.
Once again, for the benefit of those that are listening to us right now, we've just joined the live transmission that is actually coming from the our sister radio World Media, and there is now a question thrown to the Yoruba World Leader, Professor Banjo Akintoye. Let's go back.
Lórúkọ tọmọ àti ti ẹ̀mí mímọ́ èmi náà ẹ̀kú ẹ̀mí ilẹ̀ ọ̀sọ́ ẹ̀ṣẹ̀ wọn ní láti randíran ẹnikẹ́ni tó bá lóun fẹ́ dìde ogun sí ẹnikẹ́ni nílẹ̀ alààyè tó bá sọ wípé ilẹ̀ Yorùbá kó lọ sí ìgbèkùn bíbélì wípé ìgbèkùn ni yóò gbọ́ bẹ́ẹ̀ni tó bá ní ká fi ìdà pa ọmọ Yorùbá ìdà láòbí pa ọ̀rẹ́ ọmọbìnrin ẹ má fetí sí ohunkóhun tí àwọn aláhesọ tó máa ń sọ because when I see so emotional and I'm not happy and I know gbogbo àwọn ọmọ yín pátápátá ní gbogbo àgbáyé inú wọn ò dùn tóbi àtẹ̀yìn àti àwọn bàbá wa Sunday àdìyẹ mo rọ̀ yín láti ẹ má fetí sí owó ẹnikẹ́ni ibi tẹ́ ẹ kó wa lọ ibẹ̀ ni kẹ́ni dojú kọ àwọn ọmọ yín lè tẹ̀lé yín lẹ́yìn a ò padà a ò ṣe méjì adẹ gbàdúrà fún yín àdúrà yẹn gbàdúrà àti bàbá délé wọn bàbá Sunday gbogbo all of you we are praying for you the Lord that is just like a show God bless you.
Ọdúnpẹ́ thank you God bless you.
There is no a question, it's just prayer for you. So àdúrà rẹ̀ gbà fún wọn torí dẹ́ àgbà ìbéèrè méjì predicate tí ó tún ní wọ́n sókè.
Wọ́n á ní bẹ̀rẹ̀ ká ló lóní sẹ́jọ́ ọ̀pẹ̀ ṣe ìbéèrè kan ní ẹgbẹ́ sí.
Ẹ ṣe sà, Mr. Funsho, ẹ máa bèrè ìbéèrè 1 minute la fún yín sà, ìṣẹ́jú kan. Ẹ ò bí ìtàn wáyé Mr. Funsho. Wípé ṣé òní tó December 25 ọdún bíi jẹ́ torí ìjọ ní
a máa lẹ́tọ̀ ní wà láyé. Ọlọ́run máa kó gbogbo ẹ̀ together. Àwa Yorùbá kì í ṣẹ̀gbọ́. Takàndínlé máa lọ dèké aláìrẹ́dì. A máa rẹ́dì, à ń rẹ́dì bọ̀, ó kù díẹ̀. Ẹ jẹ́ kọ́ Ọlọ́run ṣe iṣẹ́ ọwọ́ ẹ̀ kó pé Ọlọ́run fún ṣe sàn Ọlọ́run fún ẹ ṣe all right.
Dájú ò ní lè gba ìbéèrè wọn ìní ìmọ̀ torí pé aago mẹ́rin.
Ẹ̀ka má tún béèrè lọ́jọ́ àjọ
ọkọ̀. Ó lè sọ fún wọn sàmúlẹ̀ àní lè gbà béèrè kankan mọ́ aago méjì àbòlé ẹ̀kọ́. Bẹ́ẹ̀ ni ò ní lè gba ìbéèrè
Okay, we're gonna come back. We leave that and come back straight to Star Radio UK. A couple of things that we're still discussing here. For the benefit of those that were probably not seeing, the images right there, it was just, a breaking news that we have to transmit into quickly and swiftly, and we got what we want to hear from that. And I believe those of you that are watching us will probably not have missed much as well. Because I believe that has been going on before I was able to pick, the signal of that press or world media presentation by the leader of the Yoruba Self-Determination. So I'm going to now come back and finish up our discussion here. And our discussion has been the Nigerian democracy. Are we seeing the final end of that? Are we now seeing the final end of the Nigeria democracy, where new countries will emerge out of Nigeria? And let us also remember that as much as anybody can say that these countries will not be recognized around the world, it is not going to be the first country as well, whether it's the Biafra nation, the Yoruba nation. There would also be countries that have not been recognized. As we speak today, Taiwan is a country that is not recognized by the United Nations, and we also have so many other countries like that that are already operating as an independent country. We were looking at the final part of the question, well, not final, but which is going to be my final part of this, review of the interview that was granted to Dr. Olisa Agbako, who is also, a senior advocate of Nigeria. Good evening to all our listeners and viewers. Good morning. In New York, it's coming up to 4 p.m. Toronto is 4 p.m. In Japan, it's just coming up to 8:15 a.m. They're probably getting ready for work and children going to school. In Libya, it's just coming up to 10 p.m. And the most important aspect of this conclusion is, since Nigerian democracy is fragile, are we sure that it can be saved till 2023 as the election, for those that say they want an election, not people like us, because we don't believe no more in Nigeria, because Nigeria has actually failed every Nigerian. So if you are still of the view that you want to have a country called Nigeria, it is your right to that. Nobody can take that right from you. But it is also our right, for those of us that say we don't want to be part of Nigeria because Nigeria is not working for us. There's a lot of comment coming through. Let me quickly appreciate those that have joined us in the last, maybe, I don't know how long you've been watching, how long you've joined us, but I would like to appreciate those of you that have joined so far. This is, Star Radio UK, where every Wednesday I discuss issues around Nigeria. We've been doing this for the last 5 years until we now had the opportunity to come and talk more about the self-determination and the right of the Yoruba people, to leave Nigeria, because Nigeria is not who we are. We are not Nigerians. We have been told lies, and we now need to stop that lie that we have been given since our birth. You might love Nigeria so much does not mean you are a Nigerian. You are an indigenous person that was put together by the British government, and that has been the reason why you have called yourself a Nigerian. And if we remove certain things out of that, you would officially realize that it has been lied for the last 108 years of the amalgamation. Your grandfathers, your grandmothers, they were never anything as Nigeria. They all had their own kingdom until the British Empire destroyed those kingdoms, and today they are telling us to save Nigeria by voting another election in 2023. That is not going to solve our problem. What can solve our problem now is either the British government de-amalgamate Nigeria. Not sure whether the British government wants to do so, but it is still something that they can look into. We are not asking for referendum. Referendum is not going to be able to work in Nigeria. We all know that. And all we are saying now is a complete dissolution of Nigeria. Let me quickly appreciate those of you that have joined us. Aziz Adeyemi, watching on Star Radio UK, good evening. And you say Yoruba Nation now, no going back. Ogundare Ramono, you say Ekushe Takuntakun Lori Omo Odua Yoruba Nation, Ogawa Oloye Sunday Igboho Sha. Good evening to you. Good Akomo Lafe, you say Yoruba Nation now, no going back. Well done, Mr. Koiki. Kuli Adeyemi says thank you. Thank you to as well for watching. Libere Otu Prayers Mountain, you say bless you, brother. Bless you too as well. You also went on to say no going back, Yoruba Nation now. Ari says Aisha Buhari feeding so fat with Biafra and Oduduwa resources, abuse of power and a corrupt dead husband Muhammadu Buhari. That is coming from Ari. You also went on to say all hail Biafra, all hail Oduduwa. Bisiriu, you closing your eyes. I'm not sure why. Aris also said no going back. So that is coming from the Star Radio UK Facebook. Let me quickly go to now, Adesina Adeyemo say Buhari is the last president of Nigeria. That is not a news. Nigerians should stop living in denial. Adesina, good evening to you as well, my brother. Adesina Adeyemo also say good morning. Well done, Koiki. Happy Rashid say good evening. Ademola Adebanjo said, welcome, Mr. Koiki. God bless you, sir. Yoruba Nation no going back. And I say the same thing. God bless you. Olakunle sends a lot of love. And now let's go straight to the other platform, which is also the sister platform. Kola Fakumoju. You said, thank you, Koiki, for bringing news to our doorstep. It is what we do. Thank you so much. You also went on to say Nigeria have no democracy, but a military and dictator rules. So what about these politicians that are putting on these agbada? What do we call them? You went on to also say, and I believe you are referring to when we transmitted that quick short breaking news from the Yoruba World Media there, that we don't want too much questions for Baba. Thank you, Baba, done well. And I believe you were referring to that. You've left a lot of comments, and I can only appreciate you for putting all these comments. You went on to say Nigerian politics and Nigerian government is collapsed, but we are living in denial as a result of poverty, religion, brainwashing, slavery concept. You also went on to say if Unitary can form interim government, so Babakintore can form interim government, so Igboho can form interim government, so any groups can form interim government. Are we normal in any sense of forming normality? Wow, very good question you raised there. You also went on to say do not be fooled by political campaign, but no election. You also went on to say Nigeria, you left a lot of comments and I can't appreciate you more. Nigeria government is among the terrorist group internationally. Let me say also Sunday Afolabi said Yoruba is our official language in Oduduwa language, definitely, just as the Welsh speaks their language. We are now 10 minutes and I'm going to wrap up quickly the last part of what Dr. Olisa, and I hope you've enjoyed it. I thought I'd bring that to us today because I read it myself and I thought it would be nice to dissect it a little bit, for you to understand that the democracy in Nigeria is very fragile and it is going to collapse. I'm going to appreciate those of you on all the sister platform, Koiki Media, that have joined us. Just bear with us. Mrs. Felicia, where you says Ekweto Koiki, thank you so much. Yeah, Mrs. Alaja Amana, you went on to say no going back, Yoruba Nation now. All the way in Manchester, Iranulobade, Alhaja Musurat Adenike, you went on to say Yoruba Nation now. I hope you're doing very well. It's been a while. I normally see you on Instagram, but it's been a while. I've cited you, and I guess you've been very busy. I hope Manchester is not very cold. It is becoming very cold, and this is one of the reasons why a lot of our grandparents, my mom, they want to return back, but there is no safety, there is no security, and I cannot guarantee your safety and security in Nigeria if the president cannot guarantee. The president is always out of Nigeria so many times. Mrs. Olaya, Kenny, you say Yoruba Nation not going back. Kenny George, you say Nigeria president has too much power and they do nothing. And you're quite right, nothing has been done so far. Muri Owoyemi, you say good evening to you as well. Frank Abiola, you're probably responding to somebody. The same connection Abiola couldn't use to save himself, America is coming to save Abiola, we were told until he was killed. You're probably referring to the late Chief MK Abiola. Thank you so much. Festus, say God bless you too as well. Koiki Lagboye by George, I say thank you so much. Also, Salahuddin Kamaluddin, you say not going back. Kingsley in Wokocha, all hail our Biafra brothers and sisters, and as we continue to say, Nnamdi Kanu must be released. His health is very, very key now. We're concerned about his health, and I believe the international community, the President Joe Biden, all the president around the world must intervene quickly. And you went on to say, I love you, Koiki. I cannot love you less as well. Ahmed Akinwumi Kamel, you say White Lion. Thank you so much. You say God bless you. Iyao Dua, you went on to say please share. Good evening to you. Musiba Lawal, Yoruba Nation campaign will come on in 2023, inshallah. No, it's not going to come on. It's going to come this year, just as we had Professor Akintoye said in that quick interview that we joined, telling us to go and prepare. Next month, it's going to be the D-Day month. That's all I can say. Who else is saying something? Joseph says someone will come out and tell me this great man management over government and international experience will not be impacted in his beloved wife. Madam Monitiri, watch out how she will break forth and use her late husband connection to surprise her accuser. God bless Yoruba Nation. God bless Chief Mrs. Abiola Onitiri. God bless Igboho Osha. God bless you. Say you're Osha. Share Koribe, Queen of Media. Koiki the White Lion will move. That is coming from Joseph. And I think that is about that. BB Salami, please, Mr. Koiki, please beg Mommy Onitiri, join, add together. Okay. I'm not too sure what you're trying to put there. Olori Jegede, good evening to our beautiful mother there. You say, well done, Koiki Media. Ola Rafiu. I'm just reading some of our listeners' comment just to appreciate you. Tijani, you went on to say Yoruba Nation now, and I think that's about it. I know there's a lot of you on the YouTube as well, and I can only say, let's see if we can catch up. Rikayat Amomi, the truth is bitter. You say truth is bitter is why you don't find people on this platform. Okay, Mrs. Comfort, we are seeing politics now in Yoruba Nation movement. We better learn how to be truthful in our ways to have a solid foundation, and you are quite right. Ruth says Yoruba Nation not going back. Rahim Abbas, no going back. Kudus Agbabiaka, you're responding to somebody else. Razak says Yoruba Nation not going back. Shita Ismaila, I greet everyone all over the Yoruba land. To my beautiful mother, Chrissy, Sunshine, Ola Maris, good evening. Mrs. Ojora Elizabeth, good evening. Waris, you know, to say 1.4 cents per liter, about almost 5.50 gallon in the United States of America. Sadiq Olakunle say fuel is now 400 naira per liter in Abeokuta in Ogun State. Wow. Gani Oloyede, the people have been killing Babangida. These people have been killing Babangida, have been killed. Okay, I'm not sure what you're trying to put there. Kendi Oseni, good evening to you. Truth Talk Margaret TV, great to all the Oduduwa. All hail Biafra as well. Good evening to you. And this is how we celebrate all our listeners on the platform. Prince Ademola, if I've missed your name, bear with us. Now, let's go back to the final part because I'm going to be handing over to the studio in just about a few minutes. The question that was put to the Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Olisa, Dr. Agbakoba, will it be appropriate to continue to describe Nigerian democracy as nascent, having been practicing it for the past 23 years, since 1999? This was his response, and he went on to say, it is correct to describe Nigerian democracy as fragile, very, very fragile. We have a long way from being a democratic nation, so we are very fragile. It can go either way. A fragile system is the type that can collapse any day. So Nigerian democracy can. I will not be shocked if 30 days from today, Nigeria ceases to exist. I want you to take note of that. very, very important, said there. If 30 days, and this interview was granted on the 22nd of November. So that means within 22nd of November up to 22nd of December is actually saying that Nigeria can cease to exist anymore. And don't be surprised, we've saw that before in Soviet Union. So if 30 days, according to Agbakoba, from today, which was November 22, when he granted this interview, he then said Nigeria cease to exist. Why? As he said so. Very, very key for us to understand. He says, I will not be shocked. I will not be shocked myself, because I want the dissolution, the disamalgamation of Nigeria, so that the unit of the indigenous people having their own independent nation, sovereignty, control their political status, not the PDP, not the APC we're talking about, setting up a new political party that would then operate in the Biafra nation, the Arewa nation, and the rest, and the rest, and the rest. He says, and I quote, that Nigerian democracy, a fragile system, is that they can collapse any day. When something is fragile, it can actually collapse today because it is not holding anymore. The center in Nigeria is no longer holding. They are only pretending to hold it, and they are pushing that against 2023, and we must not, as much as possible, continue to deceive ourselves that 2023 will solve our problem. So Nigeria democracy can, I will not be shocked. This is not me saying this. This is Dr. Olisa Agbakoba, and I think we should get my engineer will get his image out for us, because it will be nice for those that probably do not know what it looks like to just have an idea. I mean, some of us know what it looks like, but not everybody knows what it looks like. And that is the man that I've been reviewing his interview in the last 2 hours of the Niger Voices, today being the 30th of November 2022, on the one of the finest African and Caribbean radio station in London. The last part that we are discussing is the most important part that I want us to go through, and I only have 5 to 10 minutes to complete it, because I have to hand over back to my producer, Mr. Frank David, and Mr. Archie as well. I will be shocked if 30 days from today Nigeria ceases to exist. I would not be shocked if tomorrow it ceases to exist, because it is a very fragile country. It is divided. Take note of this. Nigeria is divided. According to him, Nigeria is divided by few things that is giving us problem. Ethnic. I am a Yoruba man. I am proud of that. There's nothing wrong to be proud of your ethnicity. Religion. I am a religious person, but I do tolerate other religions, but some part of Nigeria do not tolerate that. Linguistic. These are something that we have talked about so many times. So I want us to take note of these 3 areas that we are facing today as Nigerians. Even the political part of the campaign is already being played out. We know that Atiku is from the northern part of Nigeria, Tinubu is from the southwest, while Peter Obi is from the southeast. So already ethnic card has been played in this campaign that is going on. Thank you so much, Idowu Michael. And it is now important that these 3 key areas, the question we should ask the British government is, were they not aware of these 3 before they decided that you bring in together different ethnic indigenous people, people that doesn't speak the same language, people that have different religions, whether we are having our traditional religion from the northern part of Nigeria, which they do, or the southeast part of Nigeria, which they do, the middle. Everybody has their own tradition, religion. And we should have been using that including what they brought on us, which is, the Christianity and the Islam that we have, we have embraced. But in Nigeria today, in the northern part of Nigeria, they are still not yet embracing that we are all running the same Muslim. As a Muslim in the southwest, you are not appreciated as a Muslim in the north, because they believe that they are more Muslim, more Islam than you in the southwest. And I hope you understand that. So let's go back into it. Those are the three major fault lines. Three major fault lines. Three major. We won't be able to take calls today, but we'll try to see if I can open the phone line next week. Three major fault lines that the British decided in their own mind, not questioning Lugard, that these are different people. Why do you want to match them together in what is now known as the 1914 amalgamation? The three fault line, how is these three political parties going to solve it? Nobody has an answer to that. We are just about 4 minutes to end the program. Those are the three major fault lines we have, and we have not kept faith with the central issues in our national anthem. Though tribe and tongues may differ in unity, but we can bring our diversity, our differences in language, in religion and ethnicity together to form a great association of Nigerians that we haven't achieved. So to quote the late Chief Obafemi Awolowo, Nigeria is now referring back again to what the late Chief Obafemi Awolowo have said continuously. And it seems an average Nigerian is trying not to remember these, but trying to push the agenda of a 2023 on some of us. And that is not going to work. Nigeria is a mere geographical expression. It is not yet a country. So we are hoping that the presidential candidate that wins the election in 2023 will understand this issue. If they've not been able to understand this issue since 1999, after we came back to say we have a democracy that I've explained to us in this interview, because we don't have a democracy. It's all mirage. Everybody have just thought, hey, the time of election, you put on the face cap, the t-shirt, you get 500 naira there, you get a vehicle, you get an appointment, and eventually that is not who we are. It is very important. This is Dr. Olisa Agbakoba, the Senior Advocate of Nigeria, like I said in an interview that he granted, some few days ago. It is very important that the presidential candidate from whatever party, whether it is the PDP, AFGAP, APC, Labour Party, or the SDP, they need to understand that they are inheriting a country that is fragile. And the only way they can make progress is to bring unity to Nigeria, is to recognize that there are diverse people here. And that if we want to succeed, then we must include everybody in the discussion of how to strengthen Nigeria. If you exclude people, there will be cries of marginalization, injustice. That is what is going on now. So the 2023 election is a very important opportunity for us to learn lessons about why we have failed as a country since 1960. If you compare Nigeria to United Arab Emirates, we are older than them, but you can't compare UAE, that is Dubai, and Nigeria. The UAE have gone far in the journey. The question is, why are we not moving faster? Because UAE is having a same ethnic, language, culture. You cannot progress in Nigeria because some part of Nigeria do not expect us to have education that we were given by our forefathers, the late Chief Obafemi Awolowo. The question is, why are we not moving fast? I've answered that. It is because our political leaders have failed. No, I disagree with you there. Synod Advocate of Nigeria. It's not because they failed us, it's because we don't speak. You've already answered the question, why are you not going back? And this is what they've done in Nigeria for the last 60 years. People have been coming to talk, doing analysis, presenting, but we've not been able to identify the problem. The only thing we can do now is come next month, every one of us from the Yoruba side should go and prepare. I cannot go further more than say this is going to be the part of the program. We might come back to it again next week, but I have to now say it is time now to hand over back to my producer back in the studio, Mr. Archie, to take over now. And I will be back same time next week on Star Radio UK, your finest African and Caribbean radio station in London. My name is Olayomi Koiki. Thank you so much, Alhaji Adeyemi, and the rest of those of you that have joined me tonight. And like you say, call out Nigeria election is a scam, and the fraud from the perception of the 419 politicians are deceiving us with their looter. And that's why you can see Dino Malaye, vexing, putting out his vehicle out there. And that's how far we can go. I say thank you so much, and bye for now.